Both storms begin as unsettled weather systems off the coast of Africa. Hurricane Connie is the first to arrive on August 10, 1955. By the time she leaves New England on August 11th, her torrential rain has set the stage for disaster. As Connie moves into the Great Lakes, Hurricane Diane takes aim at the U.S. She reaches North Carolina, grazes Wilmington, Delaware, and then sets her sights on southern New England. By the time Diane blows out of New England on August 19th, she leaves behind record floods, 103 deaths, $1 billion in damages, and a reputation as the worst flood since Noah. The hardest hit town in western New England is Westfield, Massachusetts. This is its story, as told by the people who survived the flood of '55. In 1955, Westfield is a growing city of 30,000. Main and Elm Streets bustle with activity, and the senior class of Westfield High School is preparing itself for the challenges of graduation and leaving the familiar behind. They, along with everyone else in Westfield, will soon be tested in ways none of them could imagine. August of 1955 is a scorcher, and temperatures hover in the mid-90s for several weeks. But people in western Massachusetts make the most of summer and wait for better weather. When the rain finally arrives, it's a welcome relief. But that relief is short-lived as Hurricane Diane enters the Westfield area on August 18th, bringing rain heavier than anyone can remember.
The first Hurricane Connie dumped, I think it was 4 to 6 inches of rainfall over much of the area that drains into the Westfield River. And that did an excellent job of saturating the soils and making it essentially impossible for additional rainfall to soak into the ground. And just a few days later, about a week later, Hurricane Diane came through, and that was the major storm. It dumped as much as 20 inches of rain in areas within the watershed, again over a day or two, and that led to massive flooding. The system just couldn't handle that kind of flow. And the Knightville Dam was overtopped, so water flowed over the top of that structure, and then all of the tributaries and the 2 branches of the Westfield River contributed water to flooding downstream, which was massive. Westfield's actually near the confluence of 2 streams, the Westfield River, which is one of the largest tributaries of the Connecticut in New England, and then also the Little River, which drains an area up in the Granville area. So we've got 2 streams coming in here. Parts of the town are built on the floodplains of both of those rivers.
Flood of '55 was what we call, 100-year events. It was a little bit greater than the so-called 100-year flood event. The flood of '55, I guess, here at Littleville was what we call 12,000 cubic feet per second going through. And to give you an idea, like right now, you guys are filming today, was 65 cubic feet per second. So it was a lot more. And then when it got down towards close to the Westfield, it was like 45,000 CFS, and by the time it was hitting the Connecticut River, it was like 70,000 CFS. Cubic foot of water is about 7.5 gallons, so you guys can kind of figure out how many gallons a second's coming down.
It doesn't take long for Diane's rains to swell rivers and streams in the Westfield area to flood stage. And when trouble comes, it strikes early. On Thursday, August 18th, the Lakeshore Limited derails at a track washout in nearby Warrenoco. The wreck injures 30 people. Ted Bishop, a Westfield police officer, is assigned to work the derailment.
I was with Joe Alexak, and we got the call to go up there. Well, they told us to go up in Warrenoco and wait, which we did, and then we got the call to proceed. And the trains were told to cut their speed, I think, down to 15 miles an hour. I don't recall just exactly what speed, but very low speed. And the tracks had washed out. So when the train, well, it was just about in the Warrenoco, the town of Warrenoco, when it just went off the tracks down into the riverside. And the tracks were twisted like pretzels, And the engineer, I can see him sitting on the track and the nurse attending him. He had minor abrasions on his face, and that was the only injury. That was the beginning. And so we knew we were in for something, but we had no idea at all what it was going to be like.
The incessant rain causes nerves to fray, and rumors of an impending flood spread throughout Westfield.
I think we were up all night with the rain, and my mother-in-law was so scared. So I came down here and stayed with her.
Well, I was home with my 2 boys, and it started raining, and it rained heavier and heavier and heavier, to the point where I looked out the window and you really couldn't see anything but rain falling. And as time went by, I kind of got worried because I wasn't too sure about the situation, and I wasn't sure where my husband was.
The rain continues to pour throughout the evening of August 18th. The Westfield River hits 5 feet above flood stage and continues to rise. Little River and most of the lakes and streams in the area also jump their banks. Events begin to unfold with gathering speed. In the early morning hours, an earthen dam holding back Fuller Pond on Montgomery Road ruptures. A 30-foot wall of water and debris roars down Simmons Creek and into Powder Mill Brook, sweeping away everything in its path. The water cuts North Elm Street in half, blows through 2 floors of Sterling Radiators buildings, and inundates Notre Dame Street. The remaining water then tears open a recently repaired dike near the city's new pumping station off Meadow Street, contributing to the massive flooding in that part of the city.
Well, I just started my vacation, and I had gone to Nantucket. And I was set to play golf that morning. And I got called back in the house by my wife, and they said, somebody's on the phone, and I tried to tell them that you just started vacation and you didn't want to be bothered with business, and whoever was on the phone said, well, just tell Mr. Reed that his plant has been washed away.
We heard a big bang.
Bang.
That's when the water hit Sterling, because that was like a Quonset building. And when it hit that, it was a big bang.
It was a case of a tidal wave, in a sense, hitting the building, going right through it, going across the street, knocking down walls in the building across the street that we were using, and before spending itself in the meadows a few hundred yards down the way.
We had the safe, Sterling Radiator in the back.
Payroll state
Payroll.
in our backyard.
It wasn't signed though.
And we had a Coke machine.
Yeah, we had a Coke machine.
We had workbenches in the back of our yard.
Our office was destroyed. Well, no, those were the days where you didn't have computer backups. Everything was paper. And we lost our receivables, we lost our payables, we lost our records, and it was just devastation.
Yeah, he was down cellar when the dam broke, and he was just coming up the stairs, and it just gushed down, and he just got out of the cellar in time. So he came out, and then he saw his car floating away, and he got kind of angry. He was putting the summer furniture on the porch so he could save it. He said, I'm not going to save this, so he threw it all in. He can take that too, he says.
The wall of water leaves behind 12 inches of mud, oil, and debris, prompting newspapers to call North Elm and Notre Dame Streets the most desolate corner in Westfield. But the damage is widespread.
If you went down where H.B. Smith Company was located, the water was just pouring out of that complex. And State Street was flooded, Cross Street, Lindbergh Boulevard, that whole section was underwater at one time, primarily because Little River was coming with water. From H.B. Smith all the way to the West Springfield, into West Springfield, was underwater at one time. So you had auto dealers down there. their cars were flooded, and anybody who was down there had businesses, they got flooded.
Thaddeus Kuczynski of Meadow Street is the first person in Westfield to surrender his home to the rising water. At 5:30 a.m., he and his family moved to safety at the local YMCA. By mid-morning, his home is flooded to the rooftop.
My sister lived in the house by Burnett's trailer park, and the water started coming up, and I got real worried about her because she was right on the river, and the phone lines went down, and I couldn't find her, and she had a new baby, but eventually I found her at her mother-in-law's. Most of the trailers washed right downstream, and her house was just, it collapsed.
We got a call to go to the Mundale section of Westfield, Granville Road, up near the filter beds, of large boulders rolling down the road. Ted and I went up to find out what was happening up there, and we found the large boulders coming right down the road at us, and we shortly thereafter another officer joined us up there. Then we realized we were marooned up there, so we left both cruisers on the advice of the station in Mundale, and we started to walk back. We got back to the station, which was on Broad Street at the time, and everybody was happy to see us, but they were disappointed we didn't bring the cruisers with us.
We only had 5 cruisers at that time, and 2 of them were in Mundale.
Neighboring towns also suffer from the heavy rain. In Russell, Potash Brook damages 1 mile of Route 23 and limits access to Blandford. Route 20 also washes out in several places to a depth of 15 feet or more, effectively cutting the main road between Albany and Boston.
And then the hill towns, it was pretty bad because what did the damage of here was because of the steep gradients of almost all the streams that ran into the Westfield River. Why the water really piled up and eroded the stream beds, and then it washed a lot of trees down, which plugged up the bridges and culverts and everything else. So then the water ran over the bridges and so on, and well, it did a lot of damage to the roads. One house down nearly washed into the river, but not quite. But the whole, I guess, about all of Russell was pretty well flooded.
In Westfield, the phone system dies at 1:25 p.m. At 3:45 p.m., the first civil defense warning sounds, indicating a major disaster. By now, the Westfield Police and Fire Department's radio systems crackle with calls to help people with flooded basements and those in need of rescue. 500 residents are rescued, many by boat or amphibious duck.
We got a call to go down just on the corner of Main Line Drive and Main Street, and there was a house there, and the fellow was up on the 2nd floor, and we got a call to take him out of there. When we got there, he didn't want to leave, so we got the duck up against the house, and we're trying to explain to him that you got to come out of there. And we got him out. Now we're headed back towards Westfield, and going over that little bridge where the Little River comes into the Westfield River, we got stuck on something. We thought we were on the railing of the bridge, and when the water went down, we were stuck on the top of a truck that was parked there. Somebody had parked their truck on a bridge figuring it's a high spot.
The flood is now at full stage in Westfield. Little River moves towards City Hall on Broad Street. Water in the Meadow Street area stands at 10 feet or more. The Westfield River rises 20 feet above flood stage on East Main Street near the West Springfield line, covering the nearby railroad tracks. All the roads into Westfield are flooded, and the police restrict access into the city. Mayor Alice Burke struggles to keep up with the widening disaster. And just when it seems things can get no worse, they do.
They radioed us to go to Adams Nursery. There was a group of the workers there that had gotten up on the roof of the nursery. And that's all you could see of the nursery, which is now Walmart.
There was a Good Samaritan came along with a canoe, or he thought he was going to be a Good Samaritan to save, and two of the people that were on the roof got in the canoe, and unfortunately neither one of them was a swimmer, and the canoe capsized, and that was the only two people to my knowledge that we lost in the flood. It was unbelievable, unbelievable, the way the water was going down through all of Westfield.
Stevens Paper Mill, a mainstay of the Westfield economy, stands on Little River. Crane Pond, formed by a levee and dam system, provides water for the mill's huge boilers. The 7 feet of water now pouring over the spillway at Cobble Mountain Dam and flooding Little River threatens the mill and the surrounding area. Worst fears are soon realized. Water from Crane Pond tops the dam adjacent to the plant and erodes away 100 feet of the protective levee. Lower sections of Stevens Paper Mill are ripped apart as equipment and paper stock are swept away in the raging waters.
The lower mill got clobbered. The water was going over the dam and over the bridge on 202, so that it was there was a lot of water in that area. When it washed out the dike, then it undermined our boilers, it undermined the chimney fell into the building, and it was just water damage everywhere.
The extraordinary damage is not contained to Westfield alone. Like Russell, Southwick suffers more flood damage than anyone can remember.
Over in the center of town, there was some damage to houses. There was the railroad bridge that still hung over the chasm, just the tracks and the ties still hung together, where there had been a natural blockage of an unnatural blockage of the water coming down through the Great Brook, or Powder Mill Brook, and it had backed up into the center of town, so that several buildings in town were flooded when it had backed up. And then there was the breakage of the dike on North Pond.
Around midnight on August 19th, a dike holding North Pond in Southwick washes out and destroys the Keenan and Drummond homes. It splits North Longyard Road and contributes to the severe flooding along the Powder Mill and Little Rivers in Westfield. Local residents work frantically to plug the culvert connecting the Middle and South Ponds to keep them from flooding the area as well. Saturday, August 20th, dawns clear and cool, and hopes rise that the worst is past. However, one entry in the Westfield Fire Department log tells the story. Damage assessment and cleanup are just beginning, and the people of Westfield realize just how lucky they are to have survived the flood of '55. In a move that underscores the seriousness of the situation, President Dwight Eisenhower holds a news conference at Bradley Airport in Connecticut and declares southern New England a disaster area. And in Westfield, Mayor Burke surveys the damage and enlists the help of the National Guard.
Several days, about 2 days later, I guess, after the actual flood, National Guard was called out. I was supply sergeant there, and we started doing what they wanted us to do, which was actually guard duty. And there was no electricity, there was no gas, and a couple of days after the flood, the National Guard, we had these deuce-and-a-half trucks, and we had 6 water tank trailers. We had our people out, and like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, we had loudspeakers. We were telling people we had water. People would come out with cups, with little coffee cups, and they wanted to pay us. But naturally, we didn't take any money for it.
It doesn't take long for the cleanup in Westfield and adjacent towns to swing into high gear, and people come together in a concerted effort to rebuild what was lost.
Flood Garcia
From
from
Southwick.
Southwick, a good friend of ours. And he came down with a big pump that was on a trailer. And between us fellas around here, helped them. We pumped out all the cellars because they were full of water.
The main topic of conversation was, are you all right? Did you lose anything? Is there anything I can help you with? And it was really great.
No matter where you went or what you talked to, that they were taking people in from the Meadow Street area and so forth that had nothing. I mean, everything was underwater.
There was so many volunteers that got in their canoes, that got in their motorboats, and went out helping out rescue people. And we're lucky we didn't lose some of those boats. I think one of the first people rescued, at least I was told it was from a fellow that was a volunteer in a motorboat. One of the officers was carrying a woman, and the water was right up to his chin. But when he got almost to the boat, he stepped off the curb. Of course, now he's 6 or 8 inches down. The water's up here, let the woman go. But they grabbed her and they got her in the boat.
It's interesting the way that disaster brings out the best and worst in people. I mean, we had all kinds of people trying to help us, and we also had looters who were going after motors and controls and things that were spread all over the area. So you get that crisis situation where some people are so helpful and other people are trying to take advantage of it, and quite a commentary on human nature.
In the weeks that follow, Westfield pulls itself together. As the water recedes, damaged buildings and debris are removed. Temporary bridges are built across ruined roadways, and local banks provide up to $1,500 in emergency loans. The city eventually condemns 76 factories and homes, and although estimates vary greatly, local papers report losses in Westfield to be $5 to $10 million. Damage throughout the area is 10 to 20 times that amount. But the surviving businesses in Westfield show signs of life.
Everybody was just working right around the clock and little by little getting it back going. So there were strange things. You made do with what you had to at the time. All in all, they were lucky. We didn't have anybody injured or hurt, or nobody got killed, and nobody got washed away. And Stevens was a very good company, and fortunately had the wherewithal to get it going again.
I think we were doing something in about 2 weeks, and Herb Burke, who was here at that time as head of manufacturing, he and Bob Dewey and the foreman and the men, it was remarkable the amount of dedication that everybody had.
As the flood of '55 recedes into distant memory, the question remains, can it happen again?
The flood control structures that are in place upstream are designed to protect against roughly a 100-year flood. That means a flood that you'd expect to happen once a century on the average. But of course, floods aren't regular events, so there's no guarantee that another 1955 event couldn't happen next year or the year after or sometime much sooner than that.
If back in the 80s, the Missouri River had its 500-year flood event, that could happen here this spring. I mean, any year, any time, we never know.
Whatever the future holds in store, the past is still with us. And when it rains and the day turns dark, many older folks in Westfield reflect on the flood of '55.
Every time I drive Meadow Street, I think of the flood. It's just automatic that August 18th you couldn't drive here. You'd have to have a boat.
When somebody tells me I love to lay in bed and listen to the rain, I lay in bed and I turn the radio on so I don't have to listen to it.
The noise was awful, huh?
Yeah.
That when it came down so fast.
Well, we never forgot it.
No.
You know?
No, I never forgot it, right. We haven't never.